Today's video, we'll be taking a look at this PC based around the AMD FX-57 CPU.
We got 20-minute videos on old technology, computers, laser discs, and some CDs. We got two little dogs licking their balls on the screen, and now it's time for the show.
Alright guys, and thank you for joining me on this video. This is a machine I've been building for a very long time. So this machine is built around, as I said, and as you see in the title, around the AMD FX-57 CPU from 2005. Pretty much all the parts, more or less, in this machine make it kind of a 2005-2006 build. The FX-57 is from 2005, and we'll talk about all the individual parts in due time. But yeah, I've always wanted an FX-57. I actually had a FX-55 back, I don't want to say back in the day. I didn't get one new, they were very expensive, but I did get one used a few years after they came out. So I had the FX-55, I thought it was a great CPU, and the FX-57 was like the pinnacle of that line. So this is the build I made. This is really focused. This is an XP machine, so focused around that CPU for 2005-2006. So it's going to be a really cool, pretty powerful single core XP machine. So we'll take a look at that. So first of all, we're just going to take a look at the case here and look at the front. I tried to do this one up a little bit and add some flair and some bling to it. So I'm really excited about this PC. I've been slowly sort of collecting the parts, casually searching for quite some time now, and I'm glad it is finally put together. I can finally put out a video on this really cool PC. So the case, I'm not sure the exact model. It's a Cooler Master case. Here's a power button, reset, LED, what is something light. I don't know, I think I just picked this up randomly at either a Goodwill or I think I actually picked this one up at like a yard sale sort of situation, garage sale, flea market sort of situation, and I just thought it would be pretty good. I don't know if the case is era correct, but it should be pretty similar to cases of, you know, mid 2005-06. So we'll just go down the line here, taking a look at the front of this case. We'll start here. I just put in a single DVD drive. I believe this is a multi-format, so it plays CDs, DVDs. Yeah, no, very appropriate. Back, if you remember, back in 2006, 2005, optical drives were still a thing. So then the next thing we have here is pretty cool. Originally I was going to put some kind of like LED fan display thing, sort of like I did with my my Pentium Extreme Windows XP machine video I did a while back, where I just put in one of those really cheap sort of fan, cool, like fan controller displays, and it had an LED and it all lit up, and it was pretty neat. But I ended up coming across this. I'll try to, if I remember, I'll put a link in the description. I got this, a guy on eBay, don't remember his name now, like I said, I'll try to put a link in the description if I remember, but he kind of makes these plates for 5¼ inch bays, and it actually lights up. We'll take a look at it a little bit later. I just thought that was a really cool addition. Now, this came from Greece, which is funny because during a pandemic and everything, this actually got to me in the United States faster than a couple things I ordered at the same time within the country. So I just thought that was kind of funny that everything I ordered that day, this came first all the way from Greece. But he makes a lot of different ones, and they have different LEDs. So when this powers on, this lights up. Like I said, I'll show you guys that in a little bit. But yeah, he has AMD. I think he makes a lot of different ones like Intel or Nvidia, Radeon, a bunch of little like cool ones. But like I said, the FX-57 machine, I went with the AMD, so really cool. Now the other kind of just stupid random things, I just had these sitting around and I just decided to put them in here. They're really sort of pointless, but it might just look normal, but these are actually, if you press on them, they're stupid like pop-out trays, and they have a little tray in them. And I don't know if you want to like store things in your computer. I have one down here at the bottom. I just had two of them for whatever reason. I think they were in a computer I bought, and I took them out. I don't know. I guess if you're a teenager, it's good for hiding your drugs. I don't know. You could put a pencil in there and maybe a little notepad. You might be able to fit a CD in a jewel case if you take the little tray out. I don't know. They're kind of stupid, but I think they look better. They look better than what there's just the blank things that were in there before. So yeah, whatever. Other than that, we have our made for Windows XP sticker, of course, and then next to that we have a black floppy drive. Now, 2005, 2006, 1.44 megabyte floppy drives were kind of out of style at that time. But you know, they were still around, as far as I remember. But they weren't horribly useful. But hey, gotta throw one in there because we can. And then under that, we just have two USB connectors and audio. I believe this is for FireWire, but it's plugged. It's unused. This was in this case when I got it, so I left it there. It's always handy to have some USB ports on the front. And then under that, this actually looks better than I initially thought it would, but this is just our little FX, AMD FX badge. So, got an FX processor in there. I wanted a nice little FX case badge to put there. And like I said, it's like silver. It kind of goes with it better than I thought it would. I mean, I guess the case is black and silver, but yeah, I think it looks nice. I like it. And then, of course, like I said, we have the power button and our hard drive, I believe, LED and a reset button, and that is the front of the case. So let's move on. Alright, let's open this guy up. I hope the lighting's good enough. I have one of these, a light over here with like multiple bulbs on it. I don't have any kind of professional setup, but like 3 or 2 of the light bulbs on the light went out, so I hope it's giving off enough light here. See, this is my current lighting situation. I use this weird, I don't know, I call it like an octopus light because there's all these tentacles, and it has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights on it. And usually if I have like, you know, 5 pretty powerful bulbs in each one, it gives me pretty decent lighting. But I'm down to actually 3. I only have 1 on now, but I only have 3 working right now, and they're not the brightest bulbs. So yeah, that's why lighting in my videos lately has been pretty crappy. I guess I should just go and get new light bulbs. They're not that expensive, but I just haven't gotten around to doing that yet. Or actually get like better lighting for videos. You know, that would be amazing, but you know, I probably won't. But that's my lighting situation. One thing I can tell you about this case, man, maybe it's just because everything inside here, but this is heavy computer. You know, anything with these FX CPUs tend to get hot. I like how there's a nice little vent here on the side, and we got a little side vent fan. So thumb screws, so I'll just unscrew these and take off this panel. Alright, and here we go. We have a look at the inside here. So here's our DVD drive, and then back there is our AMD cutout. It has a little power connector coming off of it to power the LEDs on it. And then here's those little weird little tray things that I just kind of put in there. Here's our power supply. It's nothing really high-end. It's a 600 plus watt power supply from Roswell. They're fairly, I mean, I don't know, you know, all the brands, which are the most reputable, but I think Roswell is a fairly reputable power supply maker. So yeah, we'll go through all the parts in here. I guess we will just start with the motherboard. And I got this motherboard off a friend of mine. I asked if he had any socket 939 motherboards, and he had this one. So if there's one thing my channel has over LGR, it's my laziness. He can't beat me on my laziness. So instead of taking all of this stuff out and pulling out the motherboard and taking a look at the motherboard by itself, I have some really old footage that I took with my older camera It's HD, but it's not like really, it's real poor quality. But yeah, when I first got the board and I started on this project years ago, I took some footage of the motherboard outside of the case and talked about it a little bit. So let's cut to that footage now, and I'll apologize in advance for the dip in video quality. Is several years old. I'm on a much worse camera. Alright, so here's the motherboard we'll be using for this project. Now this motherboard is the Asus A8N32 SLI Deluxe. This is a really nice motherboard. From everything I've read, it's very stable, feature-filled. Now I can't show you the CPU because I mounted the CPU and put this nice hulking heatsink on beforehand, but we'll talk about that in a minute. This is socket 939. The RAM here isn't the RAM I'll be going with. It's just placeholder RAM right now. I actually haven't bought the RAM yet because I can't find it, because there's certain special RAM that I'm gonna hope to find, and then you'll see if I find it. But yeah, this is a very cool socket 939 board. It supports pretty much all socket 939 processors. It's got a nice chipset heatsink. But if you did do SLI with this one's cool because I believe this is the first or one of the first motherboards to have dual 16 times SLI. Usually when you do SLI with these boards, I don't know if that's changed now, but you'd put one in, it would be the full 16 times, and then the other one would be 8. In reality, though, having both running at full 16 really didn't do all that much with performance, so it was more of a little marketing gimmick. We've got ATA 133, I believe, here and here. We've got floppy. So this still has everything on it. Got the two for the power here, and for extra stability, we even have a little Molex for extra power that might be needed if you're running two of these. I think that's SATA E. We've even got for the, we're not going to be using the built-in video, but has, I think that's just, is that composite out? We got PS2. We've got USB 2.0. We're not going to be using the built-in sound. And we've got optical for the audio, but we're going to be using a sound card with this. So this is a really nice motherboard. Originally, I wanted to go with AGP socket 939. I wanted to do like a really super fast AGP build just to show off kind of the end of the AGP era. But a friend had this motherboard, and he was just like, you know, you can have it, just take it. And I was like, no, I really want AGP. And then finally I was like, okay. And then I saw this board and I kind of fell in love with it. And I changed my project just to use PCIe. Alright, so I hope that didn't hurt your guys' eyes that much. But that was a look at this cool motherboard he gave me. Let's take a look at the hard drive. So I've got the hard drive here, and this is the second. So we've got the hard drive here, and the hard drive is another thing that I took some footage of earlier. I guess it wouldn't be too hard to pop this guy out and take some new footage of it, but yeah, why bother when I took some older footage. So again, let's take a look at this hard drive, and excuse the temporary dip in video quality. Alright, so for our 2006 socket 939 build, choosing a hard drive was pretty easy because it was a pretty clear consensus on what was the fastest or the best enthusiast hard drive for that year, and that's the Western Digital Raptor, the 150 gigabyte, the WD 1500 ADFD. Now this one is dated as May 2007, but these drives were available in 2006. This one was just manufactured a little bit later, but it's the same model that was out in 2006. And yeah, these are fast. These are SATA drives. And they even have, for backwards compatibility, they even have a little Molex connector. But yeah, these are SATA drives. They're actually, I believe, 10,000 RPMs as opposed to 7,200, which was, the standard for, fast desktop hard drives. But this one's actually 10,000 RPMs. Not quite as good as some of those, 15,000 RPM SCSI drives, but that's pretty fast for a, just a regular SATA drive. let's see what else about this thing. 150 gigabytes. I mean, I think they were bigger size. You could get bigger size drives at the time, but that's a healthy size for a hard drive. Yeah, these are fast. You could, styling is a little, it has these little, I don't even know if those help with cooling or anything, but they've got those, looks like little fin things. There was another type. It was the same drive. Specs were exactly the same, except it had like a clear thing on it, so you could actually see the you know, the hand, I don't know, needle hand, you know, the arm looking on the hard drive. And I guess that's pretty cool, but when it's stuck inside a case, you're not really able to see that, even, you know, if you have a clear case with lighting, and then maybe, but I don't know. Plus those drives, they seem to be a little bit less reliable, so, and they're more expensive, so it's like you're paying the same, well, you're paying more money for a drive with the same specs that's less reliable. It didn't really make sense for me for this build, so yeah, I just went with this hard drive, which is yeah, this should be pretty much the clear winner for 2006 hard drives. Alright, so let's talk about the CPU real quick. Unfortunately, you know, I'm doing this video after the fact, so I've already put this cooler on, and I'm not going to remove it to show you the bare CPU. But, so yeah, for a while there wasn't a whole lot specifically on the AMD FX-57. Phil from Phil's Computer Lab did, I think he did like 2 videos focusing on this CPU, or at least this CPU in different builds. So that was cool. He beat me to the punch. Yeah, so check out those videos if you get a chance. But yeah, here's the CPU, so I'll just go over it briefly. This was a really fast CPU for 2005. It clocks at 2.8 gigahertz. It's unlocked, so it's overclockable. I'm not overclocking it in this setup, but I might do a follow-up video where we can see if we can overclock it. I'll probably might get a different cooler. If any of you guys have any suggestions for a cooler for overclocking the FX-57, please let me know. But yeah, so that will probably be a separate video if I do that. So we're running this at the stock speed, 2.8 gigahertz. It has 1 megabyte of cache on board, L2 cache on board the CPU, and it was the fastest single core CPU at the time and for a good while. I'm pretty sure maybe they came out with a later, like a Pentium that was clocked higher, maybe. But this is, as far as single core goes, this is really fast. It was like over $1,000 when it came out. I think it was like $1,030 or $1,038 when this CPU came out. Very expensive. Pretty much mopped the floor with everything else as far as, you know, single core speeds. There were dual core CPUs out at the time. They were usually clocked lower. Well, I believe at the time they were all clocked lower. I would say, you know, some of the quad and or dual core at the time CPUs, you know, you'd be better at things that utilized that, but for games at the time, almost nothing utilized multiple cores as far as games go at the time. So something like Crysis, I would think would run really well on this CPU, because I believe that game was really more focused on single core fast, you know, CPU megahertz speed as opposed to multiple cores. So as for gaming, you know, early mid 2000s, you know, XP games, this thing should be a beast. I believe it crushed, you know, all the competition from, you know, Intel, even the Extreme chips at the time. So yeah, really cool CPU for, you know, if you want to do a single core sort of setup. Really cool CPU. I should also say, also it's a very expensive CPU and apparently hard to find. Why am I showing you this motherboard? Well, this is actually, I couldn't find the CPU at the time on eBay. The best I could do, I found a, I guess it might have even been a better deal, but I found this motherboard with the CPU. So I basically, this is arguably a pretty cool motherboard. What is it? KN1 SLI Extreme revision 1.0A. But I actually bought this motherboard for the FX-57 CPU that came with it, and I think I paid like, it was around $100. I just went on eBay and I couldn't even find an FX-57, and I'm assuming they're either going for that same price or more. So like all those sort of the highest end of a certain CPU line, they go for ridiculous amounts of money. So keep that in mind if you're looking for one. Alright, so let's take a look at the RAM really quick. Now I took one of the sticks of RAM out of the motherboard here. I don't recall off the top of my head if this motherboard supports just 4 or 8, but these are, I think it might be 4 gigabytes as opposed to 8. But since we're using Windows XP, we have a limit of 4 gigabytes anyways, at least with 32-bit Windows XP. And this is the RAM I went with. This RAM was actually one of the more expensive parts that took some time to get, and you might notice they look a little bit interesting on top. We'll talk about this. So this is Corsair. This is DDR1. Each of these sticks is 1 gigabyte, and yeah, this is the 3500 LL Pro RAM. And this RAM is interesting because it will work in other boards as far as I know, but it was kind of specifically made for this motherboard. So when you got this RAM in the package, it actually said something, there's like a sticker on it, on the packaging, that said something like, this RAM works best with Asus blah 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 motherboard, which is very interesting. So I don't think this is like the fastest RAM from the era, but this RAM with this motherboard should be a very good fast combination. Like I said, I don't know, there's probably faster RAM you could put in the motherboard, but I just thought it was really cool that they put out RAM specifically for my specific motherboard, so I had to track it down. But yeah, the another cool thing about it is, if you look on the top, there is LED lights. And I think 2006 was maybe the beginning of the whole RGB light craze. But yeah, I think it's a pretty early use of RGB, and I think it actually goes up and down depending on the RAM usage. So if you have the case open and you look inside, as your RAM is being utilized, the lights, you know, go up and down. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it's a really cool effect. So yeah, really cool to have this RAM to pair with this specific motherboard. So I'm gonna put this RAM stick back in, and then we'll move on. Alright, so looking down here at the slots, we've got 2 cards, and then we got 2 mystery cards in the middle here. I'm not thrilled with this setup because of airflow and heat. It worries me a little bit. After I do this video, I might get rid of the SLI and just go with a single card. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I do have a card replacement in mind. But I went with this because I've never done SLI before. This is my first machine, other than a Voodoo 2, where I've actually done a SLI setup with video cards. So I was really excited about that, and I wanted to give it a try. So let's take a look at the video cards and talk about them for a minute, and then we'll take a look at these 2 possibly mystery cards at the moment, wedged in between them. Alright, so here is one of our video cards removed, and I went with a 2005 video card to match the CPU. And this is a 7800 GTX. Specifically, this is from FXF, so it's slightly overclocked from the stock model. I believe the core clock is 20 megahertz higher, and the memory is also clocked very slightly higher than stock. But yeah, the 7800 GTX, possibly the best card of 2005 as far as video cards. Maybe. Again, I'm not really sure how things were going on the Radeon side at the time, but from what I could tell, it looks like the 7800 was kind of the favored card. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Now, even on that front, this isn't necessarily the fastest card from 2005. There actually was a 512 megabyte version of this card that had higher clock speed. This is 256 megabytes of memory on board. But yeah, there was a version of it with twice as much memory and clocked a little higher. Unfortunately, one, they're kind of hard to find, and when you do find them, they tend to be really expensive, so they seem to be pretty rare. The other thing is they take up 2 slots, and as we've seen, I don't have a lot of room in there, so it just wouldn't have worked for me. There was also the 7800 Ultra, although I don't believe that is as fast as this. PCIe, and we have a 6-pin power connector, so you know, make sure you have ample power connectors if you're going for this kind of setup, SLI. And what do we got in the front? We got S-Video, and then we just have 2 DVIs. But if you're using a VGA monitor, you can just put one of those little adapters on, no problem. So yeah, this is a pretty solid card. So for sound, I went with the X-Fi card from Creative. This is the SB0670, I believe. This would be the Extreme Music card, I believe. But even though it's Extreme Music, it's actually a pretty good card for gaming. It does hardware decoding. It has EAX support, and it still uses the EMU 20K1 chip that a lot of the higher-end X-Fi cards used. So this is a very solid sound card for 2005, 2006. There are some more well, I don't know, when you talk about sound cards, you talk about powerful sound cards, but there are some higher-end models. There are some that have, this has, I believe, 2 megabytes of memory on board. There's one that has a little component area here, and it actually has 64 megabytes of memory on board, but this one only has 2, but it suffices just fine. This makes a very solid sound card. And we have our various connectors here for connecting to CD drives and whatnot. I believe this connector is for connecting to like if you have a little one of those breakout boxes on the front of the case. I believe that's what that one's for. And also keep in mind with these, a lot of these X-Fi cards, if not all of them, they do require a power connector for a little floppy power connector right there to work. This is a PCI one. There are various ones also from this time period that are a smaller version of PCIe, PCIe times 2, I think. Maybe it's times 1. So overall, yeah, this card makes a very solid Windows XP sound card for that time period. And our last card hiding right here, our mystery card. This is especially a piece of hardware for the time period. And if we look at the back, it's probably too dark to see, but it would give it away. So let me take this card out and let's take a look at it. Alright, and here's our special mystery card. So this is a PPU, or physics processing unit, as opposed to the CPU and the GPU. And these were all the rage for a short period of time. There are a few different models of this, but they're all more or less the same. Some use the PCIe, and like this one, some use just PCI. This one is from forgive me if I pronounce it wrong, Ageia. I think NVIDIA made a version of this too, licensed. I believe it was the same thing. I think the NVIDIA version might be like very slightly faster clocked, but I'm not sure about that. And these do require a Molex power connector right here. And I thought this card made this machine kind of special. It really it showed the time period when these were in use for a very brief amount of time. I don't think they were ever like super popular, but basically what these did is they handled physics in games. So like an example, if you have a scene in a game, if the game supported the card and you had a lot of like things floating around like dust or rain maybe, this card would take the load off the GPU or the CPU and do all the work. And there was a whole plan to have, you know, like a triad of, you know, you had the CPU, the GPU, and the PPU working together. That didn't really work out. There's a good number of games that support this, but not a ton. But what ended up happening is NVIDIA ended up buying them out, I believe, and then they just incorporated the technology into graphics cards. I believe starting from the GeForce 8000 series up, they just started implementing the physics into the card itself. So actually using this card did influence my selection of a graphics card. So I was kind of thinking of toying with the idea of using like a GeForce, like an 8800 GTX from, you know, late 2006, but that's when they started, again, as I said, adding the PPU features integrated in the graphics card. So it would have conflicted with this driver-wise, and I believe there is a way to make it work where you can have this in with a later GPU, but I didn't really want to mess with that, and I thought the 7000 series was better for the time period anyways, so it gave me less trouble when installing this card, because I could just install this card and then the driver. So also my original plan was to like amass all of the games that use the physics processing card, but since I had that idea, actually someone else on YouTube has already done it. So if you are interested in the games that utilize this, just look it up on YouTube, and there's a video where a guy shows examples of, I believe, every game that supports this card working. And the other thing, I believe some of those games are exclusive, like they will only work with this card. You could put in one of the later video cards like an 8000 series or 9000 and up that have it integrated in and it won't work. It needs this card. There might be workarounds or patches, but for the easiest experience for the time period for cards that or games that support this card, you just use this card. So I think I do have a game or two that do use this card. So when we look at some games playing, I will we'll take a look at least one of the games that support this thing. But yeah, I think this makes this build pretty cool and unique. Alright, now I put everything back together. While I have the side of the case off, I want to power it up just to show you the cool like LEDs on the RAM. I guess this motherboard and this RAM would probably benefit from a case that had like a clear window on the side so you can really see that. Unfortunately this case doesn't, but I still like this case. But I'm going to hit the power button now. Alright, there we go. You can see. There we go. That's pretty cool. It's like a stereo setup or something. And then it should go down, and then it kind of, like I said, I don't know how accurate this is, but it's kind of cool. And let me see, I had video for a minute up there. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And then I want to show you guys the front, the AMD little cutout on the front here. We got a little bit of light coming in from the other room, but I've turned the lights off. So let's take a look. This is what it looks like, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I went with he offered a lot of different colors. I went with green. I was originally thinking red because, you know, AMD, people think of like Team Red with Radeon and stuff, but I went with green because I looked at the packaging from the time for the FX chips, and the labeling on the packaging was green, so I went with green, and I think it works out really nice. It looks really cool, you know, in the dark, gaming on this machine at night, so I'm really happy with that. It's pretty cool. Alright guys, and here we are right now. We're just kind of looking at the splash screen for this nice motherboard. I'm going to go into the BIOS and just poke around a little bit. Quick comment on the stability of this machine. Obviously I'm doing this video editing, you know, after the fact, and this machine's been pretty stable on me. It's been pretty nice stability wise. I ran it for like 8 or 9 hours straight when I was doing benchmarks and tests. It didn't give me any problems. The one big issue, which we just heard a minute ago though, it is very loud. There's a lot of fans in there. Of course I can mitigate that. I can put in newer fans that are quieter. There's probably a lot of like real redundant fans in there I could get rid of if I really wanted to. The Ageia card has a fan on. The SLI, the two video cards, have fans on them. You know, I can really cut down on the number of fans. And I do have a lot of plans for this machine in the future. I do want to try overclocking it, so that might be a bigger, better, newer fan on the CPU. But I do want to get rid of that SLI setup. I really want to put in an ATI card. Unfortunately, as far as my research shows me, ATI cards aren't compatible with that Ageia PhysX card. Kind of like how the later NVIDIA cards aren't either. There's probably like driver hacks that work around that, but I don't really want to mess with that. So I might take that Ageia, however you pronounce it, PhysX card out. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe put it in my other Windows XP machine, the one that has the Pentium Extreme in it, and I'm using like an AGP GeForce 7 card in it currently. So I might throw the Ageia card in there. That card's a little after that computer's time, but only by like a year or two, so the games that work exclusively on that card should still work in that machine. So yeah, that's kind of like my future plans for this build. Alright, and here's CPU-Z, just because I like to show CPU-Z running when I can, so you can take another look at the specs here, going through it. Also, I just like to point out, unfortunately, I don't recall the driver version I'm using for my video drivers off the top of my head, but they are the latest ones that still work with the Ageia PhysX card. And you can see here CPU-Z, it does in fact see 2 video cards, so that's the SLI. And now we're going to take a look at in the drivers here. Always make sure when you're running an SLI setup that you go into the drivers and make sure SLI is enabled, because even if you have the 2 cards in there and they seem to be working, if you don't enable it in the drivers, it's probably not working. So here we go into the control panel. I'm just going to look at the PhysX tab here for the drivers. And this one says PhysX by NVIDIA. I think at this point, NVIDIA had already bought out Ageia, so it was kind of like their drivers. Older versions will probably have Ageia and obviously different layout. Make sure you enable the PhysX card. There's a little button up there. One has no acceleration, and one says, you know, the accelerate to use the PhysX card. I believe if you click no acceleration, if you do have a later card in there, like a GTX 8800 or whatever, it'll probably use the PhysX on the card, but you can't use them both at the same time. It seems it has to be one or the other, unless you maybe do some hacks or something. I just know these cards don't work with cards after the 7000 series. There's also some cool demos on here to demo the use of the PhysX card, like, you know, things here you like tear little flags and move things around. So take a look at some of these demos really quick. And now let's take a look at the benchmarks 3D Mark 03 and 06. And I do believe 06 does take advantage of that PhysX card. So let's take a look. So yeah, we did see some dips there with some of the benchmarks, especially looking at 06 where it did dip into the teens sometimes. That Final Fantasy benchmark, I ran it on high. I've seen machines choke on that benchmark, so that actually wasn't too bad, even though it was sub 30. So let's take a look at Fear here real quick, the built-in benchmark for Fear with things maxed out at 1024 by 768. And then we'll just take a look at a couple random games from roughly the time period. Alright guys, and we've got some more footage running in the background here, a little bit of a game we saw earlier. This is Prey from 2006, underrated first-person shooter game from that time period. Really quick, couple things. Farcry, that game seems really picky about drivers. I've played that game on a number of cards, and driver issues seem to pop up a lot, and then you use a different driver and you don't have as many glitches. Unfortunately, there's a number of glitches with this, but other than that, it ran pretty well. Another thing maybe you noticed in some of the video, I don't know, I'm seeing it here in editing, but I didn't see it when I was playing on my CRT. There seems to be, like, middle of the screen, like a horizontal line, like a tearing that kind of appears. I don't know if that's just from the capture card, and maybe because it was an SLI setup. I didn't notice it or see it when I was playing the games on the CRT, but it seems like it's something that maybe the capture cards picked up. So if you notice it, I didn't see that when I was actually playing the game. It just seems to be something that's happening from capture, maybe because of running SLI. I don't know. Let's see. Other than that, Crysis ran okay, 800 by 600 on medium settings, but if I tried to run it on anything other than that, like high settings, it was very not a pleasant play through. And the last game we're going to take a look at here is Bet on Soldier. Now this is a game that does support the Ageia PhysX card directly. Just make sure you update this game to at least 1.3 or version 1.3, or else it doesn't seem to work with the Ageia PhysX card. I didn't play too much into this game, not 100% sure what the physics are doing, but I believe it's like when you shoot the boxes and they fall apart, or especially when you shoot like these barrels we see here on the left, when you shoot them, like a spray comes out and it moves the barrel, and you know the barrel flies around and explodes, and I believe that's what the card is actually processing or doing. Alright, so I guess we should probably wrap this up. I can see here on the timeline that this video is already at 44 minutes, so this is going to be a long one. Although I have to say I did enjoy making this system and putting this guy together, but so far, like I said, I only tested a fraction of the games here, but I expected kind of better results. I don't know. I know Crysis is an extremely demanding game, but I expected a little bit better results because I did hear a lot about how that game, at the time it came out, really favored faster CPUs rather than like multi-core, and I figured it would run pretty well on an FX-57, but I don't know. Maybe it's the video cards. I don't know, but I am going to experiment with this build a little bit more. I want to overclock that CPU, and definitely want to try a different video card setup. So what are my thoughts on this build with the FX processors? You see it is surrounded by a lot other vintage machines sitting around it. I wish I had more games that took advantage of that PhysX card, but I know there's not a ton of them. And the PhysX card itself and the games that took advantage of it, as I said earlier, there are some YouTube videos where they go over every game that supports that Ageia PhysX card. But it is neat. I like to have it in there. I don't know if I'm going to keep it in. Actually, I don't think I will keep it in there because it limits me on video cards. So from what I can tell, it only works with NVIDIA drivers and NVIDIA cards. There may be some weird tweak hacking workarounds around that, but I don't really want to deal with that. And I really wanted to put in a different video card here. Now the SLI setup and like even dual GPU single cards and stuff, they're cool in concept, and they do help with certain games, but, you know, I've always just kind of preferred a powerful single card. So I don't even think I want to keep the SLI setup in there. It's taking up too many slots. The extra fan's loud. I just think I could do, I just kind of want to go a different direction in this thing. And what I really want to put in there is, it's sitting right over there. That is a Radeon. Yeah, so here's our card, a little closer look. This is a Radeon X 1900 XTX. This is a cream of the crop card for 2006. From some of the videos and reviews I've seen online, it should even beat out the GTX 7900 in SLI. Possibly. It should certainly beat out those 7800 GTX in SLI. At least as far as I know, and give us less issues with things like micro stuttering and stuff like that. Obviously the heatsink on this thing has been removed, and there's been a aftermarket fan put on there and little heat sinks on the RAM chips. So I really want to put this card in there, but as far as I know, it will be incompatible with that PhysX card. So I think I'm going to take the PhysX card out of there and maybe put it in my Pentium Extreme machine that's actually in that case right there. The PhysX card is going to find a new home, I think. But for this FX-57, I think I might do another video on it with that Radeon card, just to see the difference. Yeah, man, a $1,000 CPU for 2005. So we haven't seen the last of this build, so I'm gonna do another video on it with, like I said, with some changes. But as it is, yeah. Again, always in my videos, I wish I could test a lot more games. I just don't have the time for it. So you know, we only get around to testing like 5 or 6 games, if that, maybe a benchmark or 2. So it's not the greatest sampling, but you saw the results. There's some other videos on this CPU out there. Check them out. Please, if you have any comments, put them in the comment section. If you like this kind of content, just subscribe and hit the bell. And thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see some comments from you guys on this particular build. So I'll see you in the next video.